No news about any Elden Ring DLC to date. The long-awaited From Software game still has some mysteries to unravel, and our hopes definitely lie in having some more of the lands between to explore. What can we expect from an Elden Ring DLC? First of all, we might have more than one DLC, just like it happened for Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3. Considering how big Elden Ring is, it wouldn't be surprising if Miyazaki gave us 2 or 3 expansions. My speculations on the DLCs are based on the structures of the previous From Software games DLCs, and, of course, on what we know of Elden Ring so far. We might also have no DLC for Elden Ring, as it happened for Sekiro. Considering the games before Elden Ring, we have some room to speculate on the general structure of the DLC. We will probably get brand new areas to explore, maybe with some elements tied to the areas from the main game. The areas in Dark Souls 3 are totally new, but Dark Souls 1 and Bloodborne reshaped some parts of Lordran and Yharnam respectively. We might also encounter or fight against characters only mentioned or hinted at in the main game, like the Snow Witch, Ranni's secret mentor, whose appearance is said to have inspired the features of the doll which houses Ranni's soul. It happened the same with Artorias and Lady Maria. According to what we know from the game, there could easily be 3 DLCs: the Eternal Cities, Miquella, and the Gloam-Eyed Queen. We travel through 3 different Eternal Cities in Elden Ring: Nokron, Nokstella, and the Nameless Eternal City. The Nameless one seems more probable to become part of a DLC. We don't know if it had a name before, or if its name has been forgotten. It is also the only Eternal City which lacks a starry sky, and Leyndell is directly above it. This is more than enough to have the Nameless Eternal City as a good setting that could throw light on some of the somber bits of the Elden Ring lore. The absence of a starry sky is solved when you encounter Astel. In the description of its remembrance, it's told that Astel destroyed an eternal city and stole its sky. Maybe the name of an eternal city is tied to its sky, which went lost after Astel's pillage. Remaining in the Skyfield, do you remember the description of the Memory Stone? It is said to be a fragment of the black moon that once hung above the Eternal City. The Japanese version generally speaks of the Eternal City without hinting at one in particular, and we can't tell if it is either singular or plural. So, the Eternal City being treated as a more specific one might be just a translation shift of the English language. My guess is that there was a single moon shining above all the Eternal Cities. The moon discourse becomes even more intriguing if you think about who uses moon magic. Exactly, Rennala and Ranni. Ranni's quest is intertwined with the Eternal City of Nokron, where we find the knife she uses to kill her 2 fingers and sever her destiny from the greater will. And who's right before the path to reach the climax of Ranni's quest? Astel himself, who lurks under a very familiar starry sky. Who knows, maybe Ranni's great rune lies in the depths of the Nameless Eternal City. Talking about Ranni, maybe her master, the Snow Witch, doesn't come from the giant's mountaintop as her name may suggest, but climbed up from the depths of an Eternal City. After all, Nokron's entrance is deep in the woods. And where did young Ranni encounter the Snowy Crone? Exactly, in the woods. Another interesting bit of lore that I'd like to be explored further in this DLC is the Numen. All the assassins of the Night of the Black Knives were Numen, and rumored to be close to Queen Marika. The Queen Ants in the Nameless Eternal City drop Numen runes, and some ants we encounter in our exploration of the underground are feasting on corpses. These might imply that the Numen, who came to the lands between from far away, settled in the Eternal Cities, where the Noxus Well found shelter after provoking the rage of the Greater Will. In the fields nearby Nokstella and Nokron, we fight the Dragon King's soldiers. This means that this DLC could also share some more insights on dragons. How are the Dragon King soldiers related to the dragons? Do they share their same set of values and ideas? If they do, why did the dragons attack Leyndell? And who is the god Placidusax was waiting for? The DLC of the Nameless Eternal City may give us more information on the lands between before the arrival of the external gods and the Greater Will. To enter the DLC, I think there are different options. Through a particular sarcophagus in the Nameless Eternal City, or via one of the 3 giant thrones. There are 2 giant skeletons respectively sitting in Nokron and Nokstella, but the one in Sellia is empty. It's interesting that we have a throne above ground, not so far from the other entrance to Siofra, and very close to Greyol's Dragon Barrow. This topic might be less likely to be explored further because we have quite a clear picture of Miquella and his sister Malenia. Both are cursed with different afflictions, Miquella who can't grow, and Malenia burdened with the rot curse. Miquella wants to remove the curse from his sister, but Mog kidnaps him before he can complete his own rebirth. However, there are still some interesting bits that might arise from this DLC. We could know more about the external gods, starting specifically from the Rot God, whose influence couldn't be lessened even by the Earth 3. This said, the main reason why I think this DLC might come to life is because of the egg in the Mogwin Sanctuary. It is there, visibly made to be interacted with, and yet we can't interact with it. Maybe it's meant as a DLC entrance, but all the entrances to the DLCs in the other FromSoft games are quite easy to reach and usually put in areas you are bound to reach. Having a DLC entrance behind such a difficult boss might be a huge put-off. Another viable option for the DLC entrance would be the belfry connected with Nokron, very close to the Mogwin Dynasty Sanctuary, or the statue of Miquella and Malenia in Altus Plateau. Nearby the statue we find the Amber Starlight for Seluvi's quest, so it's a point in the map well known by players. And even if someone can't remember where it is, in Elden Ring there are instances of having automatic markings in the map, for example when Lee sends us to Gurranq. If the egg is really meant to be used in the DLC, we might enter Miquella's dreams as we did with Godwyn's That Bad Dream where we fought Fortisax. This means Miquella isn't necessarily alive, since Godwyn himself is dead. Entering the egg could be the closure of the DLC quest. You defeat the final boss, obtain an object, and get it back to the egg. In a similar fashion of what happens in Dark Souls 2 with the 3 crowns, and in Dark Souls 3 with the blood of the Dark Soul. The bearer of the curse obtains the 3 crowns after defeating the final boss of each DLC and brings them to King Vendrick. The Ashen One defeats Gale and then brings the blood to the Painter. We don't know the whereabouts of Miquella's rune nor its effects. Ranni discarded her rune, but we do not know what Miquella has done with his own. The only encounter we have with Miquella is after defeating Mog, but the demigod is merely an unbirthed creature in a grotesque egg that we cannot interact with. I wouldn't be surprised if his rune was still inside the egg. With this DLC, we might understand more not only about the Omen Curse, but also about the cursed state of Miquella and Malenia. Curse is the key word when talking about the twins, but also about their father, Radagon, who is said to have been cursed by the giants. Would we finally be clearly told if Radagon had been merged with Marika at some point in his life, or if he has always been a part of Marika? I tend to favor the latter hypothesis, which could also become an explanation to the twins' cursed existence. This is definitely the one thing we know the least in the entire game. We have only like one object directly related to the Gloam-Eyed Queen and too many apostles to kill. What is the Gloam-Eyed Queen's identity? Why did she want to kill the gods? We only know she controlled Destiny's Death and led the Godskin apostles until Maliket stopped her. A popular headcanon wants the Gloam-Eyed Queen to be Melina. Her blade of calling recites that the one who walks alongside flame shall one day meet the rod of Destiny's Death. She says she lives burned and bodiless, and there is something she must apologize for. Her mother, who is definitely Marika, gave her a purpose that was lost a long time ago. After losing her purpose, Melina became a bodiless existence. Was she turned into such a state after the fight against Maliket? Does she have to apologize because her actions as the Gloam-Eyed Queen made her lose the same purpose she is now pursuing with a renovated heart? The strongest connection between Melina and the Gloam-Eyed Queen is presented if we choose to become the Lord of the Frenzied Flame before Melina's sacrifice to light the flames on the Earth Tree. Melina appears again after the Tarnished has mended the Elden Ring. She opens her left eye for the only time in the entire game and promises to kill the Tarnished using Destiny's Death. The Frenzied Flame ending makes Melina tenderly greet goodbye to her spectral steed Torrent that she gave us as a present. Torrent and the ancestral spirits share very evident visual connections. The horns, the bluish light, the magical sigil under them as they jump in the air. This means Torrent might be strongly related to the ancestral spirits, if not descend from them. If Melina really is the Gloam-Eyed Queen, I wouldn't be surprised if in this DLC we came to know more about ancestral spirits, who are a phenomenon beyond the purview of the Earth Tree. But please, no more ancestral spirits fights. The probable entrances to this DLC are two. The Belfry to Farum Azula, where we find the Godskin Apostles and Maliket, or Melina's office, in case she really is the Gloam-Eyed Queen. If Melina isn't the Gloam-Eyed Queen, then we have akin to nothing about this mysterious figure, and this calls even more for a DLC. On a final note, Maliket defeating the Gloam-Eyed Queen could be a parallel of Artorias defeating Manus. The real deal is that the Chosen Undead went back to the past and defeated the main villain. Unfortunately, for time continuum reasons and stuff, we will never be accredited of that victory, and Elizabeth is the only one who knows. Something similar could happen to the Tarnished. Sent back into the past, bound to defeat the Gloam-Eyed Queen, forgotten by all, and the glory goes to Maliket. This means that if Melina is the Gloam-Eyed Queen, she probably lost the memories of that fight. And so did Maliket, whose mind is already a bit in shambles in the main game. Despite having a lot of elements to bring my brain cells over what we could have in a DLC, I always end up thinking the most about when we might enter them. Elden Ring is an open world, and there isn't a unique path to reach the second half of the game. We only must pick 2 out of 4 bosses to enter Leyndell, and we have 2 different means to get to the Altus Plateau, where the royal capital is located. Leyndell is the first compulsory area to proceed further in the game, so I wouldn't be surprised if we will be able to enter the DLC only after we defeat Morgoth. Starting from the 3 DLCs ideas I have just talked about, there are 3 plot points that could serve as marking entrances. In other words, you can only enter the DLCs after reaching these points. Leyndell to enter the Nameless Eternal City DLC. The Nameless Eternal City is right below the royal capital. The Giant's Mountaintop, from where we can get to the consecrated snowfield and then to the Halig Tree, to enter Miquella DLC. Farum Azula to enter the Gloam-Eyed Queen DLC. There we find her apostles and Malekith. These areas and their respective main bosses are the only set path that every single player must walk through to reach the end game. Once we get there, we might be given key objects to enter the DLC, or be teleported by some NPCs, or find a special site of grace that brings us there. There's plenty of possibilities. Of course, all the theories I've listed here are only valid in case we will actually have a DLC about at least one of these 3 topics, and in case I guessed right, until we play them. After all, we might end up receiving something totally new, with completely new areas, surprising connections to the lands between, new NPCs who had more unanswered questions and unexpected situations that hardly answers all the floating questions still scattered around Elden Ring. Right, Dark Souls 3? I hope you have enjoyed the video. If you have any ideas or opinions, share them in the comments. I'd like to read other points of view. There might be more interesting things I haven't considered. If you have enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.